Good evening and welcome to See You at USC. I'm your Wednesday night host, Alexia Narcisse. Today we are here with Stephen Francis Jones, an architect who is taking the world by storm. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back. We're here with Stephen Francis Jones, who is an outstanding architect. I know his work because I'm a foodie, so I see it all over the place. If you eat anywhere, you have probably seen this man's work. He's been everywhere from Wolfgang Puck to your favorite sushi restaurant. So we're going to ask him a bit today about his history with architecture and everything else, and really what made him do what he's doing today. So how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for coming. I'm a foodie.
Okay.
I eat, that's all I do. And I've seen your work before, it's incredible. I wanted to first kind of surface on what brought you into the world of architecture. What was your inspiration? What kind of brought you to that path?
Well, I've dreamed to be an architect since I was young. And I think at first it was kind of, I took a drafting class that I was good at. And, the next year I took a class for an easy A, and
just to skirt through and finish it up.
Exactly. But I wrote my career report in 9th grade about being an architect.
Wow.
And I just had this passion that I just have been following it ever since. And
now, I've always wondered when I see architects, do you guys have a different mind? When you look at a blank room, like a canvas, do you envision things already? If you were to walk into the studio and there was nothing on the walls?
Well, what I try to do is when I get a new project, I try to find the attributes of the space, so try to find out what's working, what I can work with. And, sometimes it might be, a beautiful view, or it might be, sometimes there's not a view. Sometimes I did this one restaurant called Hamasuku, and it was in this strip center in the corner. But the thing that was so cool about it, it was like when you walked into there, it was totally not what you expected to see, from the outside. And so, when you think about spaces and you think about the design, you have to have some point of reference, and you try to make it so that you think about the experience, from getting out of your car to walking up and how you approach it. You want to make a big impression, so the wow factor, so it kind of sets the tone for what the experience is going to be.
Now, I know you did your undergrad in Florida, and you did your graduate. I really don't want to talk about this one, but you did your master's at UCLA, am I right?
That's right.
So disturbing. It's absolutely terrible. We should have kept it out. What did you like about the UCLA school? Well, nothing attracted you, clearly. But what was it that made you say that this is where I want to go to study architecture?
I think that I got my undergrad in architecture at University of Florida, and I had to get my master's to get my first professional degree. So to be honest with you, my original choice was on the East Coast, and I applied to Harvard and Princeton and UCLA, and guess where
By
I ended
default.
up. But I look back at it, and the experiences that I've got from being living in the city that I went to school, there's a lot of connections that I never really intended to live on the East Coast. So I think it worked out better that I went to school here. I've met a lot of people here. I'm very familiar with Los Angeles. We studied, the urban fabric of LA, and
so you built that framework.
Yeah, so
here.
you kind of build that framework, and at first my aspirations were to build high rises, and in Boston when I worked there, I did that. I worked on high rises, and I did architecture, and then I kind of got a little disillusioned about the pace of it. Working on a project for 2 years, and it take another year to build, and you never see. And so when I finished up UCLA, I met some friends who were architects, and one person who said, "Hey, you should come work for our firm." It was a small firm, and we do restaurants, and and I'm like, "Wow, that
Sounds
and
fun.
that sounds fun." Of course, I was in my 20s, so going to the opening parties and having a project that kind of had this built-in publicity, to it. I always felt like that was something that really, really appealed to me.
That's awesome.
And so, that was kind of, where I started to steer toward the restaurant business.
Okay.
I was fortunate enough to get hired on by Wolfgang Puck to be his in-house architect.
Wow. Now, I know that since then you've opened up your own firm.
Yeah.
What is that like? What was that building process? Because you're very much an entrepreneur in being able to say, this is my concept. We actually have a really cool photo here. Oh, one of your pieces of work. This is incredible. I'm getting chills just looking at this. I'm already hungry. What was it like for you building a firm of your own?
Well, I had to take the leap, and when Wolfgang and Barbara Lazaroff told me that they were going to open the new Spago, there was a little bit of a problem, and that was that I worked for their company, but Spago was a group of individual investors. So technically, I wasn't supposed to be working on Spago, but they wanted me to.
They loved your work already.
And so basically, I had to quit and make myself available to get Spago.
Full time.
And
Yeah.
I remember I came home, my wife was like, "You quit your job?" I'm like, "Yeah."
For Spago? What is it?
Well,
Yeah.
and they was, "Did you get Spago?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not sure, but I think I did." And she's like, freaking out about the whole thing. But
Oh, that's awesome.
I was pretty confident, that I did, and so I think starting your own business is about putting yourself out there. And fortunately for me at that time, I didn't have any kids, I didn't have a mortgage payment, so I could take those risks. And I think that as you go further in your life, when you start getting responsibilities, that you have it's harder and harder to just say, "Hey, see you later. I'm going to start it over again," because it's not that easy.
Now, like any career, on the surface, it looks pretty, right? So we see the work that you do, we see these extravagant restaurants, and we say, I could do that. I could go into Restoration Hardware and pick out some lights and some tablecloth. What, for you, was your darkest moment, the hardest moment you've had in your career that people wouldn't normally see when they think of architecture?
Well, the hardest point, I think it was like right when the recession hit, and I had a lot of work. I had a lot of projects that were in different stages of design and development, and I literally, I had the rugs pulled out from under me, and to have a full-on staff, and all of a sudden, a good majority of the projects were immediately killed, and then you have to lay people off, and then not only lay people off, but start to wonder, okay, where is my next project going to come from, and how am I going to get through it? And also kind of realizing that the recession was going to be more than a couple months, that it was going to, that was a pretty hard moment for me to conceptualize and to realize. And I think that a lot of firms didn't make it through the recession, and feather in my cap now is I can say
You did.
I made it through the recession.
Yeah. Now, when restaurants are, of course, looking to you, because you're at this level now where it's like they know who you are, they're coming to you, they want that level of work, that level of proficiency. What do you look for when you're kind of weeding through deciding what clients?
Well, when I get a client that's like-minded and who has some like good ideas, those are my favorite clients, and because I mean there's one thing to be able to come up with a design and come up with cool looking things, but you really, I pride myself on listening to my clients and understanding what their concept, what they're trying to do. And with Lucky Strikes, it was like, well, we want to do a bowling lanes, and the first thing out of my mind was like bowling lanes,
How can we make this?
Why would I guess I'd stoop down to bowling lanes, But then his idea was that he wanted to take bowling lanes out of, the traditional, like, something that you did on a Saturday and leagues, and you ate over here and you bowled over there, and he wanted it to create a different experience for that. So kind of listening to those things and picking up clues on that allowed me to create the concept for Lucky Strikes, and so if somebody would have just come to me with an empty space, I would have a harder time trying to work something in. But the more that
they work with you,
they work with me, and I understand, the concept, and I understand the space, the better the end result is.
And do you have any projects that are your baby that you just fell in love with throughout working on it? And
well, I did MB Post in Manhattan Beach, and I live in Manhattan Beach, and I when they approached me to do that project, I was like, oh wow, this is going to be like the
one,
the cool project, because I'm going to be able to design a place I can be able to hang out at.
Yeah.
So what I did was one of the things they told me they wanted to do is they said, we want this restaurant to have soul. We want it to connect with the community. So so I started thinking, okay, well, what do I do as a resident of Manhattan Beach? Well, I love playing volleyball in the beach, go to the beach with the family. And so my daughter and I went on a bike ride from one end of Manhattan Beach to the other, and we photographed all of the lifeguard stands, like the markings on the lifeguard stand.
That's family teamwork. She took one for the team.
She did. And I photographed like the volleyball posts, and then so in the design, and if you go to MB Posts, you'll see like some of the pieces of wood has the markings of RSCN, which is how they abbreviate Rosecrans, or fourth, which is, so I have all of the numbers for all the lifeguard stands in there. So if you go there and you're a resident of Manhattan Beach, you might not necessarily know what it is that's connecting with you, but you're like subconsciously seeing. I put I put some of the volleyball posts like in the bar, and
so that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's like those kind of things, and that project really, I really enjoyed, just because
it's close to home.
Close to home.
Literally and physically.
I get to visit there, and it has a lot of my soul in it. So.
Okay. Now, a quick question before we go to break. I have to ask this. When you go to these restaurants, do they give you free food? I mean, you basically built the place yourself.
Well, interestingly enough, I usually get free food, but it's a lot of time it's a trade, where they're like,
you're going to work on another project.
Asking me for a little extras, and then they'll give me some food credit later on. So.
Oh, that's incredible. Now, do people recognize you when you walk in?
They do when it first opens. After about 5 or 6 years, there's such a turnover.
This guy just keeps coming in and asking for free meals. Well, that's awesome. We're going to go to a break and come right back. When we do come back, I want to know a little bit about how you do what you do. So for those of you who haven't seen the show before, we like to incorporate during this segment something really interactive. And Stephen actually brought his iPad. So he's going to be showing us how he does some of the work that he does. And I'm sure there's much more that comes along with this. You can't just download an iPad app and expect to be able to pump out this kind of product, but it's going to be a really cool experience, and we're going to talk a lot more about specific projects that he's done, as well as creative spaces that he's been working on within California. So stay tuned.
Hello, this is Stewie Griffin, and you're watching Trojan Vision.
You're watching the Lion Center, voted the #1 squash courts on campus. Brought to you by Trojan Vision.
Francis Jones. We are back live with Stephen Francis Jones, who is a fantastic architect. Before, if you were all watching, we talked a bit about his college career, what brought him into architecture, and even some of his inspirations. But now we're going to be getting a little more interactive, and he's actually going to show us on his iPad how he builds these projects. So we're actually going to have you open up your iPad. We're going to see how much we can make this actually turn towards everyone.
So
now, I have to ask,
Yeah.
iPads are what, 10 years old? Does anyone know? 10 years
geez.
old. So I'm wondering, have you always used this for your projects?
No.
Or? Okay.
No, and it's interesting. You know, I always carried a sketchbook. You know, so I've been always like have my sketchbook. I go to the job site and I sketch a detail, and then I take my sketchbook back to the office and I make a Xerox copy of it, and then I email it out. You know,
Right.
Or I used to
Okay.
fax it out. You know, it shows how old I am. But you know,
Now you can make it happen.
But now what I can do is I use
You
my
guys want this?
iPad.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
And we build all of our designs in a 3D model. So I'm able to
Oh, wow.
look at the design, use my pencil, and then zoom in and like talk about, think about certain aspects of it. So, let's say this element of the design, I'm like, well, it looks good, but I need to make some changes. So what I do is I make a screenshot of this space.
Okay.
And then I'll open it up in one of my sketching apps.
I need to take notes on these apps.
Yeah.
Are they free or?
These are relatively. There are
These are the
free
good
ones.
ones.
Yeah, there's the Sketchbook is free, and then there's Sketchbook Pro that is a little bit. That's a little bit more. And then, so then I would just like take my screenshots, and then bring it in as a photo. Oops, that's my
That's
family.
a cute family photo. Look at that, guys.
Here it is.
And that was your daughter who rode the bike and took all the photos for you.
And then, so from here, I can mark up. I can mark up stuff. Let's say,
awesome.
let's make this thing a little bit lower and fill in this little portion right here, and we'll add some different material on this side.
Oh, that is awesome.
So I am able to take a 3D model that I have someone working on, and then look at it and study it, and then take a screenshot, and then make notes on something, and then save it, and then send it to whatever project architect I have working on it.
Wow.
And say, let's make these little changes.
Let's fix A, B,
Right.
C, and D.
I do the same thing, like if I go to the job site and I have like a condition. This was a particular one that I'm working on now, where we were saying, oh, we need to remove the concrete in this area. So I took a photograph of it, and then I'm able to go through and same thing, mark up, but instead of a 3D model, it's like a real.
You're actually doing it here.
The picture of what it is. So I can send this out to the contractor on site, and when I walk away from the site, he knows what he needs to do. So it's like all these additional steps that used to be.
A lot of clarity.
Yeah, I mean, and when you draw, a lot of what you're drawing is the content of what it is. You might be talking about like a chair in a whole space. But to be able to really convey the idea, you have to draw the whole space. So doing it like this, taking a photo either of a model or of an actual situation.
To Steve, oh, sorry about that. Everything going on here.
So that is able to kind of condense time, and then also is the clarity of it. So somebody gets a sketch, they immediately know the area that I'm talking about.
Yes.
And I can walk away from the site knowing that they know what they need to do.
Wow. Now, what's so astounding about this is the fact that, like, I look at this and, I just see that there's concrete. It looks like a just normal outdoor space, but you're really turning it into something so incredible.
Yeah. Whenever, when I'm working on these, and then this particular project is the Earth Cafe that I'm doing in the city of Orange.
You are just too cool.
Yeah, so
Earth, he works with Earth too.
And so we're restoring an old building.
Okay.
And it's a historic building, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing is actually restoring the building and putting a restaurant in it. And so you get great little opportunities. I mean, this is this is a building that we're restoring, and we just basically completely gutted it out and discovered parts of the building.
Now, I've got to say, when I look at this, it says Earth to me. I already see that it's going to be an Earth Cafe. Do you, when you're looking for different spaces, is that something that you're keeping in mind?
Usually the owner's the ones looking.
So they come to you and say, we have the space.
We've got this great space.
Make it magic.
Here's what we want to do with it. And, a lot of times I'll come in and I'll help them evaluate it, So, we've got this great space that they want to work, and then I'll come out and I'll, point out some problems that we might have, parking might be an issue, whatever the issue may be, and so we try to help them, guide them on this. But usually, they come to me with a site that
they say, make it happen.
Make it happen, exactly.
Wow, and I'm assuming there's a lot of money being thrown around in making a project like this come to life.
Yeah, it's definitely an investment.
For a college student, our bank accounts really don't go above anything that looks like a phone number. So.
Well, this project in particular. The building was condemned actually because structurally it wasn't sound. So we had to go through and put a whole new structural steel into this old building. So imagine having to design a building, but they say, okay, leave the skin, but put a new skeleton in it.
Oh no!
And so we had to go through and basically stripped it down, and you can kind of see that the facade at one point was just like floating in the air while we were getting the steel inside.
Oh man.
So.
No, I've got to ask, do you watch these shows like Love It or List It, all of the HGTV stuff?
Yeah, I'm familiar with those. I don't watch them a lot.
But when you have the time.
Yeah, no, I do. And I think that there's a lot of, really valuable information out there. And just like anything with the modern times that, somebody's showing you how to do it. And I think that's great.
Now, this is something that I'm just wondering out of curiosity. We're at a stage where technology is so crucial, especially in regards to how people implement it into like marketing and showing people what they're doing. Would you ever consider doing a television show or even having just a YouTube channel that kind of shows this is our space, there's nothing here but cement, it's basically a trash pile, and we're turning it into this incredible restaurant or an incredible space?
Well, I tell you, if I had time.
Right? Yeah.
I think that, I've been approached to do something like that a little while ago. And it's really, you stop being an architect and you start being something else,
Okay.
And
you become more of a character.
A character, and you have to be the host and the personality and all that. And so my interest is in architecture, and I'll let you do that.
Yeah. Well, if you're looking for interns,
okay.
I will gladly film the entire experience from start to finish. Now, I have to ask about these amenity spaces that you were telling me about before. Backstage, we were talking a bit about his work with amenity spaces, which I'll have you elaborate on so I don't butcher it or explain it incorrectly.
So what it is, so we've been, we just finished opening a project in South San Francisco called Foundry and Lux. And
Already sounds nice.
and so it's basically what our client came to me and said, look, we're building 1 million square foot of office space, and we want to be able to create an environment where the people who come in here have facilities kind of similar to the way that Google or Apple treats their employees, where they have an amenities where it's the difference between your workspace and your play space is blurred, you know.
Okay.
So so that people will want to stay longer, you know, and they can take care of their needs and their lunch breaks and stuff there. So I came up with this idea. Actually, I was reading the Saturday paper, Saturday section of the LA Times, and I was reading through it one morning, and I was noticing that everything in this Saturday section was either about food or about mind and body, or were about design, where it was about things that you do on a Saturday.
Okay.
And so my pitch to my client was, the amenity space is Saturday. In other words,
that's awesome.
this space.
Let's make the weekend the weekday.
Exactly. It's like this space is to the rest of the week as Saturday, you know, as Saturday
your
is
life.
to that. Yeah. So
wow.
so the idea was that, you know, these had things that you did, like maybe Wednesday afternoon was dry cleaning pickup, you know, or you know,
okay.
all the different things that you would do. So of course, it's got the main function is a place to eat, but we also have entertainment. We have a bowling alley actually in there. We have a bar and pool tables and a gym and a yoga studio. And so if you're working in this office complex, part of your rent is to be in this, to be able to have this amenities facilities.
Okay, so people would essentially pay
Well, they pay a little higher rent, right?
Okay.
So the developers like
there
this.
we go, yeah.
The developers like this because, you know, they can sell office space at $4.50 a square foot instead of $4 a square foot. And that basically, and then the thing is like that. So the CEOs are, you know, saying, hey, I want my company to be within this community. And so you kind of create a community, because in this particular case, it's a biotech industry, and the client is HC.
Booming, of course.
Yeah, and this area in South San Francisco is kind of like the biotechnical area. And so all of the office buildings are all lab buildings. And so they're trying to get like-minded creative people together so that there's a synergy between everybody working, just the same way Apple does it, you know.
Okay.
You locate the bathrooms so that everybody has to pass by each other and say hi to each other.
Oh, that's
and
awesome.
so this amenities facilities is doing that, is bringing people together and creating a fun environment.
Creating that Saturday.
Yeah, creating my Saturday.
That is awesome. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming today. Do you have any social media that people can follow you on?
You know, I have, I'm so bad at it.
I know your kids are like, Dad, we need you to have an Instagram.
I have a Twitter account and a Facebook account.
Are those at Stephen Francis Jones? Or?
They're at SF Jones Architects.
Okay, that's even better. You don't have to memorize the whole thing. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming by. For those of you who have been watching the episode, you can follow SF Jones, Stephen Francis Jones. You can Google him. You can see some of his incredible work. And most importantly, you can eat at some of those amazing places and now work, study, and do so many other things. So I look forward to seeing how much your career develops, as it's already incredible.
Well, thank you.
So stay tuned and watch our next week's episode. Thank you all for watching.
You're watching Trojan Vision. For more of your favorite shows, check us out at trojanvision.com and like us on Facebook.